All right, everyone. Hopefully, this session was good for you. We talked more about, CSS, applying things like background colors and background gradients and images. Um, we also talked about things like CSS classes and CSS IDs, which are things that are gonna, especially if you plan on doing more web development, it's a good thing to understand, especially IDs, because basically if you want to apply JavaScript to a web page, it makes your life a million times easier to be able to select things using CSS IDs. Let's tell you that from experience. I'm not giving, well, okay, I take that back. Well, actually, okay. I'm not giving new homework, but you guys should be working on the homework that I signed on Monday. That includes the Betty's Bakery, which is kind of a follow-along type Mr. Hurwitch lab about the basics of CSS, how to write CSS, how to apply CSS in an external style sheet, how to apply CSS classes and things like that. So this is due not this Friday, but the Friday after next. Same goes for Portfolio Part 3. This is where you're taking your assignment that we've been working on, and we apply HTML5 containers. Uh, you can go through all the things, but you're going to be applying things like header, main, footer, section, figure, things like that. And then you're also going to be writing CSS. So you're going to be writing an external CSS document where you write, you know, CSS that formats text, applies backgrounds, like a background color or a background image or something like that. This will also be due not this Friday, but the Friday after next. And then we talked about this last class. We've assigned the first assignment, which is due in about 2 or 3 weeks, probably about 3 weeks. And I just want you guys to start like coming up with like ideas. Okay. There's an old kind of design saying where it's like you measure twice and you cut once. And what that means is like essentially is if you plan stuff out, you have to do less work later on. That's the core of what the saying is. And that's what we're trying to do here. Now, we're not physically cutting anything because we're, doing code, but like, you know, sometimes when we work on a project, a bigger project, it can feel a little overwhelming because it's like, man, what is this website going to look like? What's it even about? Right? Like, so we're going to kind of break it down a little bit. And it's like, okay, you guys are doing a choose your own adventure story, right? Or a path. So it's like, all right, what's it about? Just don't even worry about like the design or the colors or writing any code. Like, what literally is going to happen? You know what I mean? That's kind of like the synopsis. This is kind of like, okay, there's a story and there's a cat and the cat's trying to get back to its apartment, and maybe it runs into a dog or it runs into a flower, you know what I mean? Just kind of like thinking about what is actually going to happen from a story perspective. And you could just write it out, 1 or 2 paragraphs. And then, so this is kind of like the literary part of it, the text, the literal story. And then there's also like, okay, what's the visual design of this project? Now that we're starting to do CSS, we can start to think about things in terms of visual design, at least in a basic way, which is like colors, fonts, we can put colors with each other. We can say, okay, I want to use this particular typeface for my text or whatever. You know what I mean? And so I want you to start thinking about the inspiration of what you want this visual style to look like. Okay. So like, this is a little open-ended, but it's like, okay, find some photos and you can even generate them with AI. I don't even, these days that's an option and it's fine because this is really just kind of the inspiration part of this, but it's like what is the visual style you're going for? You know what I mean? Like this could be colors, it could be textures, it could be, just line weight. How thick are the lines? You know, does it feel very like the mood of something? Is it like dark and mysterious, or is it light-hearted and fun and colorful? You know what I mean? So finding photos and building an inspiration board. And an inspiration board literally just means like a bunch of photos connected to each other. Think about like Pinterest or something like that. So you could literally use Pinterest. Or if you want to get a bunch of photos and bring them into Photoshop and lay them out into a document or Photopea or Figma, any of those would work. And I just want you to sort of build a simple inspiration board. And like I said, the point of this is really to get your mind thinking about the non-technical aspects. Like we're gonna do the technical aspects later where you write HTML and CSS, but now it's like we're not even worried about that. We're just like, what does this even look like? You know what I mean? And then later on, we're gonna translate that into code. Okay? So that is due next Friday. Or sorry, next Wednesday, okay, the 23rd. Before classes, I want you guys to share with each other what you're doing. All right. If you're watching this before 9 a.m., we have class at 9 a.m. per our usual Zoom. Otherwise, I'll be holding office hours this Friday from 12 to 1 if you have any questions on anything. Okay?